Good morning and welcome to the first webinar on the Head Office Taxation proposal. My name is Francesca Dalboni and I will be moderating this event. I'm here today with Benjamin Angel, Director for Direct Taxation, Tax Coordination, Economic Analysis and Evaluation at the European Commission. We are here to talk about a new Commission proposal called Head Office Taxation System, and during the webinar we will use often the acronym HOT. This proposal was presented by the Commission last year in September 2023, and it is currently being discussed by the 27 member states. Even if this proposal is not yet law, we think it's important to present it to you and also so that you can start getting familiar with it. We would like to make this webinar as interactive as possible. You will see soon on the screen a QR code and also an hashtag. You can go on slido.com and type this hashtag. We look forward to your questions. Before starting our discussion with Benjamin, we would like to show you a short video on the proposal.
SMEs which want to use the internal market are facing a lot of invisible barriers.
The European Commission is proposing to establish a head office tax system for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs as we all know them.
I'm Gerhard Huemer, Economic Policy Director at SME United. SME United is the European umbrella organization representing about 24 million small and medium-sized enterprises at European level, which are 99.8% of all enterprises in Europe.
My name is Luisa Maria Țivriș. I'm working for the European Commission as Policy Officer in the General Directorate for Taxation and Customs Union. I have been working for the Commission for more than 15 years. Recently, I have been involved in the preparation of the proposal for a head office tax system for SMEs.
If SMEs want to expand cross-border internal market, they are faced with 27 different tax regimes. That means they have to deal with 27 different calculations of tax bases, tax rates, they have to deal with double taxation agreements. This makes it quite expensive for SMEs, and this hurdle leads to a situation that SMEs hesitating to use the internal market. According to figures from the European Commission, the compliance costs to deal with the different tax regimes in the internal market can go up to 2.5% of the turnover of a company. That means this is close to the profit margin in some sectors, and it does companies to start doing cross-border business.
To address this obstacle, the European Commission has proposed a set of rules called Head Office Tax System. This is a simplification to address many of the tax obstacles that SMEs face when they cross border. And I repeat, it's a simplification framework which is designed on a one-stop shop idea. And most importantly for SME, it is optional for them. What does that mean in practical terms for SMEs? Under the proposed rules, the eligible SMEs that go cross-border by way of permanent establishment, it can be a shop or a local production site, they can use this simplification framework. In practice, that means they can interact with only one tax administration in their own language, the one in their home state. And they can apply one set of corporate tax rules. And they can do this for the filing, for the tax assessment, and for the payment of taxes. And it will be their home state who will transfer the corresponding tax to all the member states where the permanent establishments are located.
The proposal provides a big incentive for SMEs to start doing cross-border business because it will reduce significantly the compliance costs for doing this. However, we have to be aware the proposal has to be adopted by the member states, and only then it becomes a reality for SMEs.
The proposal is not law yet. It is currently being discussed by member states to find an agreement. It must be agreed by all member states to make it a reality.
If once agreed and in place, this proposal will make life for SMEs to benefit from the single market much easier.
The adoption of the proposal will reduce the compliance cost, will increase the tax certainty and fairness, and will encourage cross-border investment. It will be a big boost for the internal market. I'm truly confident that this proposal will be good for small businesses.
Benjamin, before we start speaking about the proposal, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words about the work done by DigiTaxud?
Good morning. I'm Benjamin. I'm the Director for Direct Taxation. DigiTaxud is the DG which is in charge both of tax policies in the European Union, that is direct taxation and indirect taxation, and is also the one in charge of customs, which is an exclusive competence of the European Union since the creation of the European Union.
Thank you. Now let's have a closer look at the proposal. I'll have a first question for you. Let's assume that I am a small business operating in the Netherlands and I would like to expand into Belgium. Can you elaborate on what the HOT proposal does and how it will help me?
Let me start first by mentioning an intriguing figure. We have a single market in the European Union since 1993. So it's a long time, basically. It's more than 30 years. And despite the fact that we have more than 30 years of internal market, 90% of companies in Europe stay purely domestic. It is a very intriguing figure and one which, to be honest, is not welcome because we would like company to build on the internal market. When we try to understand how come companies are not building on the internal market, then the answer is that they face regulatory obstacles. And when you try to understand more what regulatory obstacle we're talking about, then taxation scores quite high among the obstacles to be lifted. And it's quite striking, actually, if you take things in a calm and iterative way. Let's take your example of a Dutch company. A Dutch company today that wishes to have an activity, let's say in Belgium, in Germany and in Italy, will need to know the tax base in Belgium, will need to know the tax base in Germany, will need to know the tax base in Italy. It will need to interact with 4 different tax administrations, the Belgian, the French, the German and the Italian one, in 4 different languages. If you're a large company, clearly you're equipped to do it, you have all the stuff you need, you can contract, you can have a lot of intermediaries to help you. If you are an SME, that is pretty daunting. So what we want is to make it easier to access the single market by providing a set of simplification rules for that company. So let me keep the example of this Dutch company. If HOT is adopted, that Dutch company would interact exclusively with the Dutch tax administration and operate exclusively under the Dutch tax base. The only thing that France, Germany, and Italy would do is communicate to the Dutch tax administration the tax liability to be paid for the operation that take place on their territory. So we are not harmonizing we are not harmonizing the tax rules. The Dutch company would operate exclusively under the Dutch rules, but we provide a 4-in-1 simplification shock. You deal with one tax administration, one set of tax rules, you do one tax return, and you do only one payment. That is a considerable advantage, obviously, for the SME, and that will help them to build on the internal market.
Thank you. Assuming now that I am an SME and I have set up a subsidiary in another member state, am I excluded from applying to use the HOT system?
Let me provide you a few details. First, the HOT system is optional. So no one is forced to go for HOT system, but you have a set of conditions to be able to activate this option. One of them is you need to be a standalone SME, not part of the group, because sometimes the group have a very high number of structures, large and small. Another condition is that the SME does not have subsidiary in another member state. If you have subsidiary in another member state, you are a group de facto. So here we're talking of branches, or as they are called in the tax vocabulary, permanent establishment. We're also asking that the company has been created or at least established in this country where the head office is for at least 2 years.
Thank you. So we said that, you said that an SME can only apply to exercise the hot rules once it's resident for 2 years in a member state. Could this rule exclude startups from the simplification tool?
We need to strike a difficult balance, and by definition, this might be fine-tuned during the legislative discussion, between simplicity and avoiding fraud or misuse of the rule. HOT is pretty new in its construction in the tax field. It is not a new concept for union law as such. There are already other pieces of legislation where the idea of operating under the rules of another member state exists. The best example is the posting of worker. So if you're a posted worker, you're under the labor law of your country of origin and you're working in another member state. Here we're doing the same for companies, where de facto the SME would continue to operate under the home rule in another member state. So we need to avoid jurisdiction shopping somehow. That is, that the company just pick and choose the set of rules that it would suit best its need, and completely artificially start operating from that country all over Europe. That is the reason why we have created this obligation to be at least 2 years in the home countries before being able to ask for the option of HOT. Because these 2 years will make sure that your activity is real, that you are truly operating in that company, and that you are not trying to play tricks. It's a delicate balance, because keep in mind that we want to make life easier for SME, but we need also to provide sufficient comfort for the tax administration that they can live with the system that we are creating. So that is among the things that are being discussed at the moment in the Council. But the intention is not to create an hurdle. The intention is just to make sure that only legitimate businesses and people which are just truly trying to expand from their own country benefit from this regime. As regards startup, specifically, well, like most companies, they tend to start in their home country by definition. They don't jump immediately from one country to another, so we don't see a major difficulty coming from this rule.
Thank you, Benjamin. And now let's turn to our audience. Let's see if you have received any questions on Slido. So the first one. But if I am an SME that does not expand, I may have to compete with SMEs from other countries which apply different rules and may pay less taxes than I do.
So it is true that under HOT, you have company on your territory which may be subject to the tax rate of another member state. The tax base will be the same, the tax rate might not be the same. That said, this is not a situation which is so new. De facto, depending on the sector of activity in which you operate, the tax liability that we face vary a lot from one sector to another, because large countries in particular tend to have pretty sophisticated tax rules. So, for instance, whether you operate in the construction or in the research sector, you will have access to completely different tax credit, and at the end, your tax liability will be completely different as well. So it is not that we are creating something which does not exist today. Keep in mind also that this is not a permanent difference. This is rather a difference which is temporary in nature. HOT is there to just help companies to build on the internal market during the first steps of their growth, first step of their life at the company. Once they develop sufficiently in another member state, most likely they would start creating a subsidiary, not a branch. And once you start creating a subsidiary, then the HOT system stops.
Thank you. I see a second question. Can I deal with all my tax obligation under HOT? Income tax, employment taxes, VAT, etc.?
No. HOT covers only the corporate income tax. So I understand that it would be better for companies to have a broader coverage. And it would certainly be easier if we were able to cover one day via one-stop shop, VAT, Social Security, etc. In the VAT field, there is already a one-stop shop today. This does not exist so far for corporate taxation. And one has to start somewhere. So even though it is not perfect, just mentioning that there would still be some administrative steps to be done in other area as a justification for not doing it would somehow prevent reaping the benefit of this very important step attached to corporate taxation. Corporate taxation is a very important element for companies, as was reminded in the video. It is expensive for SMEs to be able to face the tax red tape, and anything that can make it lighter will not only reduce their cost, increase their profitability, but also offer them the opportunity to grow.
Thank you. Let's see. Yes, I see a third question. How many SMEs will be eligible for HOT, and how will this proposal benefit them?
Well, by definition, HOT is untested, and it will be an optional system. So we don't know how many companies will make use of the option. And to be honest, we also do not have detailed statistics in the EU on how many permanent establishment branches somehow SMEs have created in another member state. So the number of SMEs that will benefit depend primarily on the take-up of the rule. But we have estimated that if only 10% of the companies that today are not making use of the possibilities offered by the internal market were starting to develop an activity in another member state, that would increase the European GDP by 0.7% per year, year after year. For a single tax measure, this is a huge positive impact. And it shows the importance of following all companies, in this case a small one, to fully build on the opportunities offered by the internal market. HOT is here to help them.
Thank you, Benjamin. A fourth question from the audience. Will SMEs still interact with their head office tax authority in case of tax disputes in another member state? What about judicial proceedings?
The possible disputes will be ruled only by the set of rules applicable in the head office. So you don't have to care about multiple set of rules. The very principle of HOT is that there is only one set of rules, the one of the home country, The other countries concerned just communicate a tax rate and nothing else. And this tax rate is applied to the rule of the home country. So if you have dispute, the disputes are to be solved under the rule of the home country, which is also a very important message for the SME, because by definition the home country is the one they know, that the language they're familiar with, that the set of rules they're familiar with. So that's also in this worst-case scenario where you have something getting wrong between member states. That is, that happens sometimes. An important simplification that you don't have to face complex diverging rules.
Thank you, Benjamin. I see another question. Is this also applicable for large companies? Can they benefit somehow?
Now, HOT covers only SMEs. We have used the definition contained in the accounting directive. It does not cover large companies. But for large companies, we have an important other legislative proposal, which has been tabled by the Commission at the same time, which is called BFIT, Business in Europe Framework for Income Tax. We have not started the legislative discussion yet. It will start at the end of May, and we very much hope that member states will engage constructively in the discussion on BFIT. This is a very big and complex text, and most likely this discussion will take time. But we concluded it would be very difficult today to apply a similar approach for large companies that the one we have proposed for HOT. It is an important step for member state, and if you want to have a serious chance to make it, we should not overload the boat somehow and come with a revolution impacting all companies, large and small. We targeted our approach on SMEs because they are the one that needs to be helped today by the legislator in the European Union. They are the backbone of our economy, but at the same time, they're the one facing difficulty when they try to have an activity in another member state. If you're a vast multinational, you're perfectly equipped to deal with it. You don't need the help of the legislator.
Thank you. Can non-EU companies apply for the HOT scheme?
Well, the set of conditions is the same for all companies, but to be able to apply for HOT, you need to have your head office in one of the EU member states for at least 2 years. So by definition, in keeping this in mind, my answer to the question would be probably no. Because if you are established in another member state while being a subsidiary of a foreign company, that means you're part of a group, and we do not cover groups. We cover standalone companies.
Thank you. I don't see any... Yes, I see one more question. You state that the HOT rules are not law yet. What is the process? Where are we now with this process, and how can businesses help advance this process?
Well, that's a good question. As you know, adopting tax rule in the EU is not an easy road. There is unanimity requirement. It doesn't mean that we do not manage to have tax rule adopted. We have now some 16 legislation in the direct taxation field, for instance. But it's fair to say that it is not an easy road and that there are a lot of obstacles. HOT brings some considerable advantages for SMEs, but is complicated for tax administration, because by definition, no tax administration is naturally very happy with the idea that some companies will operate under the tax rule of another member state on their territory. That makes issues like control a little bit more challenging. So if we want to maximize the chance that the legislation is adopted, it is important that SMEs talk to the chambers of commerce, talk to their representative, and make sure that their voice is heard, and that the SME and business representative in the respective member states go to their finance ministry and say, okay, we understand that it is bringing some challenges for the tax administration, but actually it's worth it. It truly helps us. It truly simplifies our life. It allows us to build on the internal market. We need your voice to be heard if this proposal is to be a legislative success. We need people to focus on how to make it work, rather than on grumbling of the challenges attached for control. Most legislation in the EU tax field are centered on the very big company. The standard threshold usually is 750 million euro turnover. Here, we are trying to help the small guy, the one that faces obstacle, the one that faces high cost. So it is really important that we manage to do it, and we will not manage without you talking to your representative and trying to convince them to bring the member state on board and get a successful outcome of the legislative process this year.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, and thank you to our audience. We are available to answer any other questions you might have, and please send them to an email address that we have created, that is EU Head Office Taxation at ec.europa.eu. The recording of the event will be made available on Digitaxus website and our social media very soon, and it will also be translated in all, subtitled in all EU languages. A second webinar on HOT will be organized on the 19th of June at 10 a.m. and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you and have a nice day.